A single hug saved his daughter's life. On November the 13th, 2021, Lainey and her dad Mike boarded a small commuter plane. They were heading to Beaver Island in Lake Michigan. But at 2:20 p.m., complete tragedy struck. An unknown error occurred, causing the plane to crash into the tarmac. Now everyone on board sadly died upon impact. That was everyone except Lainey. When authorities asked her what happened, all she could remember was her dad grabbing her and hugging her really tight, right before the plane crashed. She only sustained very few injuries. Now everyone on board, including Lainey's dad, passed away that day. But his protective instinct and that bear hug saved her life. If you want to hear more stories like this, remember to hit the plus.
This Connecticut man, who disappeared nearly a decade ago, was just found newly deceased and had been living in New York all this time under a different name. Robert Hoagland was 50 years old when he disappeared from his home on July 28, 2013. He lived in the Sandy Hook neighborhood of Newtown, Connecticut with his wife, and together they had 3 adult sons. At the time, Robert was a local chef and property appraiser. The family had some struggles, with one of their sons struggling with addiction, but Robert and his wife were actively trying to help him. And the couple were actually planning their retirements. 2 weeks before Robert went missing, his wife went on a trip to Turkey with her friends. During that time, the two talked regularly, and on July 27th, he confirmed that he would be picking her up from the airport in 2 days. But when that day came and Robert failed to show up, his wife learned that he also didn't show up for work either and reported him missing. Investigators pieced together a timeline and found that he was last spotted on security footage at a gas station at around 6:45 a.m. on July 28th. He was getting gas and was seen buying a map. His son mentioned that Robert then came home and the two had breakfast before the son left. And neighbors spotted Robert mowing the lawn at around 11 that same morning, but shortly after, Robert disappeared. During the investigation, authorities found that $600 was recently taken out of one of the family's bank accounts, and that Robert had reportedly confronted some men associated with his son for possibly stealing 2 of the family's laptops. But there was no evidence linking them to Robert's disappearance. Robert's car, his cell phone, wallet, and his medication were all found left at the home. His disappearance prompted a high-profile nationwide investigation, and he was even featured on TV. Over the years, there were multiple sightings of Robert around the US, but they all turned up nothing. But on December 5th of this year, everything changed. Authorities in Sullivan County, New York, were called to a home following reports of a man's untimely death. His roommate, the one who called 911, knew the man as Richard King, but authorities were having trouble identifying him. Police then found some papers with the name Robert Hoagland on it, and after investigating, they found that the man had been missing from Connecticut since 2013. They then officially identified the man as Robert Hoagland. Police say that he had been living in Sullivan County since around November of 2013. Right now, it's not known how Robert died, but police say there is no sign of foul play. His body has been sent off for an autopsy to determine his cause of death. And at this point, it's not currently known what made Robert up and leave his home that summer day in 2013.
This is the tragic story of Adele Shabani. 25-year-old Adele Shabani was an aspiring actress who eventually moved to LA to pursue her Hollywood dreams. She was attending the well-known Stella Adler Studio of Acting. And in February 2018, Adele was reported missing by her friends when she failed to show up to her class, and they were unable to get a hold of her all weekend. Police went to her apartment to do a welfare check and found her door unlocked, and when they checked surveillance footage, they saw that she had been in the elevator with her boyfriend Christopher Spots. Around that same time, Adele's phone was turned off, and the last message that she sent was to her friend asking her where she can purchase red candles. Adele and Chris reportedly got into a relationship after meeting at school, and apparently Chris didn't want anyone to know about the relationship because he was already engaged to another woman. When police spoke to Chris, he confirmed that he was with Adele and they were on their way to his father's house in North Carolina, but that they never made it there because they got into an argument and he dropped her off in Santa Clarita. Police were not able to corroborate his version of events in relation to what happened on the day Adele went missing. In March 2018, police tried pulling Chris over, but he led them on a 60-mile car chase and shot himself and was pronounced dead. Days later, Adele's body was found in a shallow grave in a remote wildlife area hundreds of miles from her home. Adele's death was ruled a homicide, and it was determined that she died from blunt force trauma to the head. Authorities reportedly believe that Chris murdered Adele, but they still question whether he acted alone.
A suspect has been arrested in relation to the murder of the 4 University of Idaho students. Today at 3 in the morning, in Scranton, Pennsylvania, the suspect was arrested by FBI. He's in his mid-20s and does not attend the University of Idaho. As of now, this is the only information we know, and I will be updating you.
The suspected Idaho murder suspect followed 3 of his victims on his Instagram. He was probably stalking one or if not all of his victims. Maybe Ethan wasn't supposed to be on his list, but he happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. On his second account, he followed Maddie and Kaylee. Maddie and Kaylee were far down on his following list, so maybe he was following them for some time.
This is Jade Jenks, a woman from California who murdered her former stepfather after discovering hundreds of nude images of herself on his computer. She was convicted last week of first-degree murder. Prosecutors argued that Jade drugged, strangled, and suffocated 64-year-old Thomas Merriman with a plastic bag on New Year's Eve 2020. When she discovered these photos of herself on his computer, she was cleaning his bedroom following his hospitalization for a fall. Authorities discovered his body in his driveway under a pile of trash on January 1st, 2021. Jade's defense team reports that the photos discovered on Merriman's computer were organized by body part and included snapshots of Jade when she was in the shower, captured as far back as when she was a teen. Jade testified in court that it was the most violating, awful, gut-wrenching feeling ever, finding these photos. Prosecutors argued that Jade orchestrated Merriman's murder, which was executed after she picked him up from the care facility where he was receiving treatment after his fall. Prosecutors also said that she admitted the crime to 2 different people. A sentencing hearing is scheduled for April 3rd. On Christmas Eve 1999, Tara Tracy was brutally murdered while at work. But was it the result of a robbery or a possible planned murder? Tara was 25 years old and a mom of 4. That day, she had just celebrated her son's 7th birthday, and then she headed into work the overnight shift alone at the Pantry convenience store in Castle Hayne, North Carolina. Tara actually lived directly across the street from the store, so she usually felt pretty safe working alone at night with her husband so close. At around 3:15 a.m., a family friend saw Tara alive and well in the store. But not even an hour later, a local bread delivery man made a gruesome discovery. The cash register was tipped over and laying on the floor with some money taken out. And then the man saw Tara on the floor behind the counter, covered in blood. She had been beaten and stabbed multiple times in the head, chest, and torso. She was actually still alive when 911 was called, but she sadly later died at the hospital. Authorities found that Tara had major defensive wounds and had really fought for her life. Police never publicly stated what the murder weapon was, but they did say that it was unique and not something that you see every day. And also that it's not something typically used in a regular robbery. Since there were no security cameras in or around the store, Tara's case soon went cold. And sadly, just 17 months later on Memorial Day, her sister would also be killed, but this time by a drunk driver. But then several years later, something really odd happened. A woman named Anne walked into a chiropractic clinic where Tara's aunt worked. Anne told her that the two didn't know each other, but that she knew about Tara and that she could speak to her, and also that she was in the room with them. Anne proceeded to tell Tara's aunt about a specific Winnie the Pooh bear that Tara was buried with. She said that Tara told her where she was stabbed and described the serrated edge of the murder weapon that the killer used, which was only information known to authorities. Tara reportedly told Anne that she saw the face of her killer, which prompted Anne to draw a sketch of the man. He had marks on his face, letters tattooed on his fingers, and the word cowboy tattooed on his hands. Tara's family asked her to go to authorities with this information, which she did. And once there, Anne was looking through mugshots of local known criminals, and on the last page was a man that fit the description to a T. And he had actually been arrested before for attacking another woman. Unfortunately, though, this information led to nowhere, and 23 years later, Tara's murder remains unsolved.
These 2 teens murdered their Spanish teacher because of a bad grade. On November 2nd, 2021, 16-year-old Willard Miller and Jeremy Goodale beat their teacher Noema Graber to death with a baseball bat over a bad grade. This all began when Willard met with Miss Graber to discuss a bad grade and how it would affect his GPA. On this day, Miss Graber drove to the park after school, which is something she normally did, to go on her daily walk. At some point during her walk, the teens ambushed her with a baseball bat and they were seen 42 minutes later driving off in her car. The next day, her beaten body was found at the park under a tarp and a wheelbarrow. The teenagers told police that they were upset that their GPA was being dropped, and they also expressed their frustration with the way that Miss Graber taught Spanish. Police also received the tip that Jeremy was bragging about killing his teacher on Snapchat. And both teens are being tried as adults, and if they are convicted of first-degree murder, then they do face life in prison.